Why can't it just get here already? Feels like I've been waiting forever, even though it's just been a couple days in reality. Still, it's close, and the temptation for impatience is now stronger than ever. I wish every minute didn't feel like it was as long as 2. I just want to finish what I started. I'm way too excited to wait. I just want to make progress. What I'm waiting for is the answer to my recently discovered problem. At least it better be all I need. The temptation is so strong, I feel like I need to work as fast as I can. And because of that, being forced to wait is nothing but painful. I guess that's what I get for being excited. I think one of the hardest stages of a project is right before you actually do anything. The countless hours you spend learning, just wishing you were doing something. But it's not like you could just start. You don't know anything yet. At that point, you'd just be walking aimlessly. So that's where all the initial time goes. Hours, weeks, depends on the project. But either way, at least to me, it never seems to get done fast enough. Especially in this case, I'm just so excited I can hardly wait. All I want is to get the car started. Even more so since the final piece is here. A complete timing kit. Though it was shipped a little worse for wear, this technically should be almost everything I think we need to get the car working. New rollers, new tensioners, the works. It was listed as having almost everything we'll need to replace all the crusty parts that have been on there for who knows how long. And just looking at them makes me want to put them on. Not to mention the kit allegedly came with everything else, and the belt isn't even comparable to the rusty one that's on the car. Before this car, I didn't even know the belts could get rusty. But I think the biggest improvement from this kit is going to be the water pump. After all, this one has absolutely no play in the bearing. And the one that's on the car, well, last time I checked, it definitely does. In fact, I think that's the main source of the knock that this car was sold to me with. And hopefully that's all it is. A misdiagnosis for a relatively cheap wear part. Because this definitely isn't right. Too bad I've got to wait even longer to actually fix it. I've read through the chapter on how to do it multiple times, but that doesn't mean I feel confident quite yet. And that's not the reason I'm waiting. Realistically, even though it sucks to wait, a little daylight would be smart, I bet. Or at least more than an hour to work on the car. I'm just too excited, I guess. At that time, all I wanted was to get the car started, to get it moving. The only thing I never questioned was if I was actually ready for the car to be done. Around the same waiting period, I actually had a completely different train of thought going through my head. So the car is completely torn apart, like down to the valves, and the intake manifold's completely off. So, since it's a project car, why wouldn't I modify the car now while it's already torn apart, as opposed to tearing it apart later? It just makes sense. And as someone who's addicted to modifying cars, this was really all the excuse I needed to look into what this car could actually use, and what mods they actually respond to. Sadly, since it's naturally aspirated, quite a few less things than you'd think. The car responds to airflow, downpipes, intakes, the basics. But since it doesn't have an intercooler, another thing that makes a big benefit, allegedly, is an intake spacer. And since the intake's already already off, that was a no-brainer. Same story with O-rings for the injectors, nicer spark plugs, coil packs, some sort of an intake, and all the tools I'd need to actually clean up the parts I put back on. I had it all planned out, and I was smart enough to order it early enough that it should be here tomorrow, giving me an entire day to work on the timing system. Shouldn't take any longer than that, right? I mean, I've already got the book, so it should be nothing more than straightforward. Might as well get started, I guess. The first step to replacing the timing belt is going to be getting to it, and it seems like there's quite a few things in the way. The first of which being the accessory belt and the accessory fan. This fan is reverse threaded, and sure, you could use the special tool that I actually did order to hold it in place while you turn it, or once that gets delayed, you could just shove an Allen into the hole and then hope for the best. Thankfully, mine wasn't on there that tight, so this actually worked. And then it was just a matter of detensioning the belt and pulling it off. While far from perfect, this book has been helpful. At least so far, the diagrams have been somewhat accurate to what the engine looks like, even though the book's really about 2 7s. The V8s are almost an afterthought, but all I can hope is that since they share for the most part a lot of the same components, it's a similar process. I guess I won't really know until I dig further into it. Once the belt was out, it was time for me to double check that the engine was in top dead center. Once again, the book really only lists it for the 2.7, but all the parts it talks about are also on the 4.2, including this hole on the block that allows you to lock the bottom end in place. There's a little recession that this plug will fit into, keeping the engine from rotating. It's only going to fit in there if the engine's at top dead center. And the hardest part about this step is actually fitting your hand back there. There's actually no room. But once it was in, I was able to check if this actually did anything. I used some light pressure, verified it wouldn't move, and was good to move on to removing the next part. Too bad this looks nothing like what the engine does. Yeah, this is right about the limit for the pictures in the book being helpful for a 4.2. I guess even though the 2.7 and the 4.2 share, for the most part, a lot of timing intricacies, their locations and parts are very different. For instance, the next piece I'm supposed to remove, according to the book, is just not on here. Super cool. All you really get for the 4.2 is a little text summary at the end. Gotta love it. But I guess at the end of the day, that's not the worst thing in the world. Really, I don't think what order the parts are removed in matters nearly as much as them actually being removed. So I guess my current plan is to remove everything I can remove until I get to the stage where I can remove the belt. Trial and error, in other words. Thankfully, one thing that was shared was actually locking the engine in time. It seems like the cam system is nearly identical. The belt drives the gear, which only spins one cam, and that cam is connected with a chain to the other one. It's the same on both sides. And weirdly, the gears are actually press fit onto the cams themselves. They're held in place, sure, but they're not actually stuck to the cams with anything more than pressure. So since the top end is in top dead center, which we verified with the marks on the cams, we can disconnect each gear from the cams so that we can take off the belt and reapply the belt without changing the timing of the top end. Super interesting design. It doesn't feel like it should work, but it does. At this point, now that the gears popped off the cam, it should spin completely independently, though right now the belt is holding it in place. Either way, I've got to do the same thing to the other side. But now that timing is disconnected, I can take the belt off, and it's easiest at this point just to cut it, no matter how wrong that actually feels. Yeah, something tells me from the look of this belt that even though the seller claimed the timing was done fairly recently, I don't know if it was. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not new, and it's definitely not new within a year. But now that it's off, I can definitely tell that the cams are completely disconnected. The timing of the engine is effectively frozen, meaning I can get back to figuring out how to take everything else off, starting with the easy stuff like the rollers. man, this water pump is toast. I have no idea when the last time this was replaced, but that amount of play is definitely why there's so much gunk everywhere. It leaks coolant every time I move it, and it's just been flinging that onto the belt for who knows how long. All these parts are pretty much junk now because of it. I think even though this engine doesn't have the same cover shown in the book, there is a cover we need to take off. It seems like there's a fairly large metal block that holds a couple different engine components. It covers the tensioner itself, and attached to it is the fan I first took off. But the weirdest part is on the other side is the motor mount. This connects the front of the motor to the car, and it stops the forward and backward rocking of the engine. Sadly, that means it's all got to come out at once, since this motor mount connects everything together. I'll just disconnect the bottom where it connects to the engine, and the top where it connects to the frame. A little strange, but not the end of the world. Okay, bottom's done, now onto the... Wait, isn't this supposed to be connected? Oh, not again. What is it with my luck and motor mounts being completely torn in half? I have a weird feeling this is not a part we're going to be able to overnight either. Nor do I know anybody with this car that I can borrow one from. Cool. Very cool. I mean, they can't be that hard to find though. I'm hoping it's a shared part with any of the 4.2s. Of course the belt-driven 4.2s have a bespoke motor mount. That just makes sense. And according to ECS, FCP, and Eurotuning, they don't carry it. They do have one for an RS6, which is also a belt-driven 4.2, but apparently it's different and requires modification to get to work. Though the modification really isn't that severe. You really just have to run a slightly shorter bolt. Still, annoying I have to do that. I mean, I could get a used one, but I feel like given the age of this car, I'm just going to be in the same position in a couple weeks. And everywhere that I've found that has the original part number seems to be on order. In other words, I don't know when we'll be able to actually get this part. Talk about a setback. Might as well get the one we have to modify on the way at least. Then we can just figure out if we'll find a better option in the meantime. Still, it's hard for me to not want to put the car back together as is. Pretend I never found the issue just to get moving again. That's what I want to do. That's what's tempting. But I really wonder if it's what I should do. Either way, all I can hope is that it doesn't get too much worse. If that's the worst issue I run into, I think I'll be alright. Just kinda sucks because of how much I want to get this car moving. But at least with the bottom half of that plate out of the car, we have way more room to work. We've got access to a couple more pulleys and the tensioner itself, all of which came out really easily. I also took this opportunity to clean the surface where all the new components are going to go. I don't want all the old grime to still be here. There's tons of it, and as soon as I pull the water pump, it's just going to create a soup. So I'm hoping to get as much of it as I can off beforehand. That way I don't have to deal with it. Really, the only thing left to remove is the water pump itself, and the book doesn't have any diagrams on it, so the new one is what I'm using for reference. It seems like there's 2 nuts on the side, and then there are 9 bolts holding it in place. And this, unfortunately, was the era when Audi thought it would be smart to mix what types of metal they use in their engines. Stainless steel hardware and aluminum don't usually go well together, so I'll have to be careful removing these. But thankfully, all of them actually broke loose and spun around a little bit, so I figured it would be smooth sailing. It's not like the bolt's gonna catch again after it's already spinning. No, I didn't hear that. Please, S6, hear me out. Anything but hardware snapped off into the block. It's just one. I could probably spin it out with a vice grip. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. You gotta be kidding me. They move and then they just stop. And it's not like I didn't soak them in penetrating oil. Sadly, it seemed like no matter what I did, it didn't really change the outcome. Most of these came out just fine, but the ones that didn't. In total, 3 of the bolts holding the water pump in place became studs, and there's not much I could do about it. At least we know for a fact now that the water pump was definitely on its last legs. It's filthy, it's crusty, it's absolutely disgusting. But how it broke is the really interesting part. The bearing that connects the impeller to the pulley is completely shot. Like the casing that holds it in is just gone. This car must have been constantly leaking while it was on. I have no doubt that this thing feels pretty worse for wear. But then again, am I really in any better of a situation? What I wanted and what I was waiting for more than anything else was to get this car running, take it on its first drive, actually see if I liked driving the car that I bought. But that doesn't really seem like it's happening for a little bit. At least those bolts did start to move before they snapped. I'm hoping with a little heat and a welded nut, they'll come the rest of the way out. Still, I've got to wait for a friend to do that. And then there's the matter of finding a motor mount that would work. There's options, but I don't know when it's gonna get here. In other words, I'm kind of stuck. Still, despite the delays, the motor mount issue, and the snap bolts, I can't help but think about how peaceful it is right now. I mean, just a couple months ago, if it was stormy like it was today, I wouldn't have even been able to start this project. Instead, I get to. It's a surreal feeling, but it's one I'm thankful for. And come to think of it, it's not like this car was going to be drivable tomorrow anyways. Sure, I guess I would have had the parts to rush it, but why would I do that? There's so many things that need to be done right on this car that rushing it would almost be doing it a disservice. I mean, like I would really feel accomplished tossing these valve covers on with no cleaning. Sure, it would work, but the whole time they'd be on there, I'd want to take them off. It would be like the job is incompletely complete. Maybe it's just an excuse to do things right and not make myself feel rushed for no reason at all. And besides, what's the whole point of rushing anyways? At least to me, I rush because I can hardly wait for the result. But when I do rush, it's not like the result of that rushing was really worth waiting for anyways, no matter how tempting it was. What if I did rush and make my goal complete though? Would I even be ready for it? Would I have had time to learn anything on the way? Or would I have just let excitement get the better of me? I mean, if this car was done already, wouldn't it defeat its own purpose? It's a project car, isn't it? What kind of project would it be if it was already done? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my content. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.